Hey Bridge fams, welcome to today's show. My name is Dexter, your host on the Dexter's Bridge Show. I'd like to appreciate all those who followed us on last week's show. I know many foodies enjoyed the food part and lots of guys have been commenting about how that recipe was wonderful. If you downloaded the meal, if you downloaded the meal, let's know what your encounter was, and if you tried that recipe, let's know how it went. And I promise you there will be more cooking parts on subsequent shows. But today I have a wonderful guest. As a man of faith, I believe that when God creates people, He predestines a path for them to follow. And they might veer off, they might lose out, they might get wild and derail, but eventually God routes them and brings them back to His path. This is the story of my guest today. Pastor Tony Kennedy grew up as every other young man and he went wild. He's been there, he did that, but at the right time, God caught him and he's fulfilling destiny. He's a senior pastor of House of Royalty, a vibrant church charged with the vision of raising kingdom giants. Speaking of giants, he's practically a giant. And I told my producers I don't want people who are bigger than me on the show. So I'm not going to take personal pictures with him. You are not going to see that. He hails from Delta State, beautiful, married to his wonderful wife, and they have children. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Tony Kennedy. Finally, we'll get to track you down.
Thank you.
Good to see you, sir. And I've been trying to have him for almost 2 months now. He's a very busy person. Of course, when you're a part of destiny, many things target you, but today he's here to tell us his story. Once again, thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's a thing of joy to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes. Were you from a godly background? I mean, did you come from a Christian home?
Well, you could say, yes, I came from a Christian. My mom was Catholic. I was born into the Catholic faith and baptized in the Catholic faith.
Okay.
But my father was not much of a Christian. Once in a while, church goer, you know, that kind of stuff.
Ceremonially, you would say.
Yes, but my mother was very faithful. In fact, I think her prayer was what sustained me. So that's practically my Christian background.
I don't want to start, guys, but I mean, if your children had to depend on your prayer for their future and your destiny, just take note and take tabs. How would they turn out? We had praying mothers back in the days. I don't know what I can say these days, but let me leave that. I don't want to attract any trouble on this show. Let's just leave it that way. So at what point did you start losing cause from your mother's injunctions? I'm sure she was both disciplined and very religious.
I think... I wouldn't actually call it swaying away. I would say there's a difference between Christianity and religion.
Okay.
Very big difference. My mother was more of following the religious practice.
Okay.
Praying the prayer that they are told to pray in church, go to church when you have to tie your hair, do stuff like that. And so those religious practices, as we began to grow, I grew up in the city of Benin. As we began to grow, we began to see things. It became burdensome, became monotonous.
Okay.
And
was it interesting anymore?
No, it wasn't interesting.
And the young man you wanted more, wanted adventure, I can imagine.
So those were the things that actually made, as it were, us derail, because we're not getting what we ought to get. There was no fun anymore. It was just do as you are told. You are not
repeating the same old pattern.
And so, and that's as we began to grow, we began to meet people, began to see things, and before you know, friends took us.
And being in Benin, all the Acatarians and all the massive dreams of every young man to make money.
And you know, another challenge was the status of my parents began to change with time.
Okay, you mean their welfare dwindled?
You know, not dwindled. They began to, you know, the thing is, many of us never consider this in our Christian journey. It's always easier to be a Christian when things are not rosy. But your Christianity is tested when things are good.
Whoa.
Yes.
Whoa.
And so, at the time we grew up, we grew up in a public compound, 2 rooms, with a corridor, face me, I face you, those kind of
face me, I slap you, say.
So my father began to do well. as a chartered accountant, he began to get jobs and began to get promotion, became a financial director in one company called Growmark Industry those days. And they gave us a very big apartment, cars everywhere, things began to go well. So status changed, so our friends changed.
So it's like saying you can't be a humble poor man. So you only test humility when when you have the means to sponsor
absolutely
your
no
vanity.
humble. There's absolutely no humble poor man.
Okay.
You know, my growing up journey, I discovered there is no single advantage to poverty. There is none. No single advantage to poverty.
You heard? You heard? So don't tell God to test you with poverty. God, test me with poverty.
No. There is no advantage. In fact, if you follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, you will know it is more difficult for a poor man to make heaven than for a rich man to make heaven.
Oh, shots fired. Shots fired. Okay, we will need to crawl out of this theological quagmire. You understand? And I'm very sure you want to put that in perspective. Yeah.
The reason why I say so is because in poverty, Jesus said a man is not defined by what he eats, but by what he says. In poverty, you discover that the friends you have, the places you go, the things you know, most importantly, the things you know, are limited. And because they are limited, you tend to blab out things you shouldn't say. And so most people say things based on their financial background or their financial capacity that will eventually affect them in life. One of the things we don't understand about life is that the entire earth we see today is made up of words. Our words have powers. What you say today is what you eventually go to encounter tomorrow. You can't live above what you say. And so, if you check the conversation of the person who is financially handicapped, you will discover why he does not meet wealth suddenly in his future because of the things he says now. And the Bible says words are spirits. And so that's why I say it's not as if it is a terrible thing to be poor. But Jesus has made a way for us to get out of poverty. I say that because I looked at my life. When things were not good, when things were not rosy while we were growing up, we had family prayer. We go to church. Our father would put us in the Volkswagen car. We would all drive to church. We'll get to church. We'll pray. Our father pray, Hail Mary, do everything. We'll come back home. We're pious. We're trying to follow dictates, follow everything. But the minute money began to come, status change, friends change, and you discover the higher you climb those days, the people you meet at the top are not religious people. We began to see my father go out on dinner parties, take us at dinner parties to meet with CEOs of companies who are trying to lure him to come over, having parties, red wine, drinks, stuff like that. The things they talk about, nobody mentions Jesus on the table. So that's where our Christianity began to be tested. So we began to see things, began to experience things, and we just made up our mind at that time because the knowledge was not adequate. Going to church is not sufficient. And because the knowledge was not adequate, we're not seeing the result of Christianity. Rather, we're seeing what the other people who were not Christians were having.
Doing, yeah.
So, I think that was where the derailing came.
Okay. You know, there's a point that he raised. It's what I'll call self-sabotaging, self-sabotage or self-defeating patterns. The words that you speak, the words that you say, they go a long way in forming how your life pans out. Like somebody sitting on the branch of a tree and trying to hew the branch where he is sitting from the body of the tree. You end up sabotaging yourself, the words that you speak. And like you said, poor people are more into these actions of sabotaging themselves.
Yeah.
You understand? So eventually you turn out terribly, but you're a product of the words that you spoke, which actually curated how life turned out. So, but what would you say was the positive influence of being exposed?
Well, the positive experience I had from being exposed was I saw the possibilities of what God could give you. I always tell people that the beginning of a turnaround is exposure.
Okay. Okay.
It doesn't matter the kind of exposure you have, but every exposure turns you around in a positive way. I began to see beyond where we're coming from. I began to see possibilities, things that were achievable, things that were possible.
Beyond where you were at the time.
I was. And so it gave me a broad perspective about life and gave me bigger dreams. So the exposure actually helped, even though some were negative, but it helped. it made me aspire to be more than what I was then.
So when would you say your personal life's journey started? You know, there's a difference between being a part of a whole. I mean, being dragged along where your parents wanted you to go and the things they wanted you to do. At what point did you become self-aware and decide to chart a course for yourself, be it negative or positive?
I think by the time I was 18 years old, my very rich father was now a poor man.
No.
Now, let me try to explain how wealthy my father was before my age 18. Then Bender State, my father sponsored a governorship election. Came down to Delta State, sponsored another governorship election single-handedly. By 1992 December, my father was broke.
So you should have been a political godfather.
He was practically broke. In 1995, he left for America for 21 years. So those trying times when there was nothing, I had big dreams, and I knew that no matter what has transpired with my father's and my father and his money was not going to stop my dreaming. I had big dreams. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to see things. I wanted to go places. I wanted to be somebody. I saw the way people flocked around my father because of his wealth. So I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to be somebody that impart lights. And so at that time I decided, okay, well, this is the course. Now that he doesn't have money, let me find my own path to making money. If it's just to redeem the family, let me find my own way to make. But I discovered that the harder I tried, the more I got deep into the world, into the things of the world, I derailed from the foundation I had, Christian background, and before you knew it, I was practically lost. I had gone into school. I entered school in 1995. After 4 years in the house, not doing anything, I actually left secondary school in 1990. Tried to forge a way to become rich. 91, I think 91 October, I found myself in Germany. Came back from Germany about 8 weeks after. Things didn't go well.
What happened?
I wouldn't want to go into that one, but just say I was repatriated. Came back,
and I can imagine all the guys in the hood. Ah, that guy you traveled. Where did you go? And I think you not be hiding.
No,
or something.
my travel was even a mystery.
Okay.
So most people didn't know I traveled. My traveling was a mystery.
So the embarrassment was actually toned down.
No. People, actually, I came back with money at that time, but it was not as we had planned it. I think after my secondary school, I went to Lagos to hustle. In Lagos, I met a friend. The place where I stayed, the landlord's son, who had a brother in Germany that wanted to bring them, but the man in question.
And I can see the confidence of your father's pedigree gave you that boost to not deal with riffraffs.
No,
imagine having to hang out with your landlord's son.
I have never.
And you were a squatter.
I have never had to deal. I've never had to hang out with people I'm better than. Never. It has been a subconscious mindset that I've had. That once I discover I'm better than you, we can't absolutely be friends. It's not possible. I go for people that inspire me, that I aspire to become, people that are ahead of me. And I've discovered the secret to relating above.
And it's not because you're a snob.
No.
It's just you've made up your mind to be strategic about your relationships.
See, the thing is, if you are hungry enough for the top, it will be very difficult to relate bottom. You know why? Because the level of mindset you now have to relating above will make you look superior to those beneath you.
So they're the ones who would not want to be with you.
Thank you.
Exactly. It's not because you
no.
Something about you just makes you not want to make them not come to you.
They would not want to hang around with you.
Okay.
So I think that's where it all started. So I became friends with him, and one certain day he just called me from nowhere and said his brother had sent money, that the money is enough for 6 people to go if I wanted to travel. So, me? Yes, of course.
You wanted to travel?
I said yes. And that time, you had so many illegal ways to travel. At that time, it was fake passport from Oluwole. There was, I think it was Gabon. Gabon passport was visa-free to Germany at that time. I can't remember whether it was Gabon, but there was one African passport that was visa-free. So went to Oluwole, got it before, piam, we took off. And that was the passport that sent us back. In fact, the six of us,
easy come, easy go.
The six of us, only 2 made it to the plane to get to Germany. 4 were caught here in Nigeria. Because the first thing is we had to learn how to speak Dutch. You couldn't travel without. Yeah, if you have a, you have
slow
to.
Down,
So
slow down. Well, call it desperation or determination. There's something about a man who cannot be stopped. A man who wants to achieve. Imagine speaking Dutch. How do I even try that? I don't even know what to do. Man! Okay, so you learned to speak Dutch?
Yes, there was a school in Victoria Island at that time that teaches foreign language. So we had to stay there 6 months. After getting everything, preparing, we started learning
Talk about being strategic.
So I think the reason the 4 were repatriated was we took either a Dutch airline or a German airline, but the plan, it was a Dutch airline. And that's why we learned Dutch, so that the airline would let us pass based on. So we got there, presented. The 2 in front couldn't remember what they learned.
I'm sure the tension, it was like moment of reality.
My mind was made up to get to where I'm going to. So, and I saw that the lady attending to them at the counter
was grilling them.
Had no ring on her hands. But there was a particular chain she was wearing. So I went into my Dutch archives to check all the things to compliment her, to talk about other things except the passport in her hand.
You latched onto the weak point, like the weak link in the whole equation.
So got there, began to talk, began to compliment her. She said, how long have you been here? I said, well, not too long. Just talked up before, okay, Papa, move on. The same thing with the guy behind me, move on. The rest too, for where? They dropped everybody.
So you can say same situation or same circumstance, different situations. People have to learn to curate how their life turns out. You have to learn to give attention to what you want. I mean, there are very many instructive aspects of this story.
My philosophy in life is that God created us with a form. Our shape is determined by us.
Wait, take that
God
again.
created us with a form, but your shape is determined by you. How do you determine your shape? How you think.
Okay.
Your mental capacity.
I agree to that.
Your mental capacity determines your lot in life. And so I was able to think my way out. It wasn't a product of prayer. It wasn't a product of anything. It was just I thought my way out. What do I do now in this circumstance? What do I do now in this circumstance? Before you know, bam, I got a result. And that was it. So the thing is, no matter where you are in life per time, always learn to develop your mental capacity. Because your life is determined by how you think, how you reason, your capacity to strategize when faced with challenges, your capacity to redirect your path when you are in the wrong place, your capacity to relate when relationship is your next level. You need mental capacity. So that was what got me through in life. But even with all the things we tried, it was still not the right path until I finally met Jesus.
It's been a very interesting story so far. We'll be back after this break. Don't go anywhere. Thank you for staying tuned. You're still on to Dexter's Bridge Show. The story got very interesting. How much people can go when they're determined to forge ahead. But you can only try so much when you're out of God's will. So, Pastor Tony, how did you meet Jesus?
I think that story is the one I love so much sharing. I got into university 1995. First thing I did in school, while others were busy registering, doing their registration, I was looking for where to belong to a course. My dad had traveled at that time when I got into school. The funny thing is this: before my dad traveled, I got into school June 1995. My father traveled in May 1995 or thereabout. Whether he traveled in May, I got into school July, but it was a month after he traveled I got into school. Before my father traveled, he sat me down in the parlor and called me. He said, now that you have gained admission, you are about to go. Let me tell you something that will help you. At this time now, please understand me, my father was broke, looking for how to seek for greener pasture abroad. This time he had found Jesus Christ. Okay. But because it was in the state of poverty, I didn't...
You didn't fancy
No, I didn't. So he sat me down in the parlor and said to me, he said, let him tell me the history about my birth. He said, while he was married to my mother, he was in his office when he saw Jesus appear to him. And Jesus was dressed like a shepherd with the shepherd's stick and a baby cloth in his hands. And he came to my father and said, your wife is pregnant and she's pregnant with a boy and the boy will preach the gospel. That was what my father told me as I was preparing to go to school. And in my bag that was packed to go to school was his automatic pistol, American specs, inside the bag, and he was telling me I'll preach the gospel. That's how I laughed. That laugh, my father stood up from where he was sitting down and gave me a slap, dirty slap.
Apparently he didn't know what you had planned out.
Well, I endured it. He was my father. I just said, well, finish anything you are saying, just say, let me go. So, to cut the long story short, I went to school, entered the cult, began to do all the things that cultists do, everything. I came back from school after 4 years. Was it 5 years? After 5 years, without a certificate.
Of course, who goes to the school with a gun and comes up with a certificate?
Without a certificate after 5 years of paying school fees, paying departmental fees, paying all the fees. I was in the Department of Applied Biochemistry. My HOD came to me first semester 200 levels and said to me, he said, please keep up what you are doing so that in my time, you will be the first to graduate with a first class in his time. That same HOD came to me in first semester, third year with tears. I practically carried over every course from that time he told me to the time he saw me.
You were the heavyweight champion, carrying everything.
There was so much carryover that if I had to sit for every carryover, I would spend another extra 2 years in school. So, well, I stayed 5 years. I tried
National
writing.
career.
I wrote everything I could write, did everything. Yet, there was still no certificate. It got to the final year, only for me to get to exams and record. No trace of me there. You are collecting my school fees. You are collecting my school fees. You are telling me there was no trace about me. Departmental fee. My HOD brought all my files. They went to admin's office. They brought exams and record, no files of me. That was a battle for another 3 years. We kept battling. One day, one of my uncles saw me and said, what are you doing now? I said, I'm still trying to get my result from school. And he laughed and said one thing to me that shaped my life. One word. He said, you are still struggling to get a BSc. Don't you know that a BSc holder and a non-BSc holder, there is no difference between them except the ability to write a letter? Kai! Never heard that before. I felt if I had that certificate, life would have started.
Up to you.
And he said the only difference is that one can articulate to put letter, write and send. The other one can't. He said 3 years you have been waiting to get one result. If you had gone to school to enter, you would have been in your final year. And that was when he shook me. He told me this in 2002. From 2002 to 2005, I was on my way to get 4 different degrees. from that word he said to me. I'm telling you the truth. I went into 3 universities online. I enrolled in Ogwashiku Polytechnic for business administration. I enrolled in Akan Polytechnic for mass communication. I was running all 5 at the same time with the best results. From that one word, don't you know? So if I had come out with a BSc, what would I brag about? So I said to myself, I will come out with 5 different results. So that when I'm talking, I tell you I have this, I have this, I have that. Now, from that time till now, I have 11 certificates I will never use in my life. 11. One cost me $5,000 to get, to go to the school and finish it online. $5,000. I even have a certificate on public speaking. I began to read everything. I began to do everything just to prove to myself that I'm just beyond BSc. But I think it was after school. I had this friend, a young friend, far my junior. He stays in this town where I stay. He came over to my house and we were playing PS. And that time I was already a smoker, a drunkard, everything you can name, I was into it. So we're in my room playing games and smoking. He wasn't smoking, but he was drinking. So I was smoking and drinking, we're playing soccer. And 3:30, his alarm rang. And he said, hey, I'm already late. I said, late for what? He said, late for church. I looked at him and I laughed. I said, what is wrong with you? Late for what church? With all these things, you mean God will still accept you in church? He said, they're there. So the way he was going about it, he wants to go to church. So I said, okay, wait for me. Let me and you go together. Let me see what is in this church, that is making you want to go. So I stood up, went with him. We entered his car and drove to church. The minute we got to church, I saw him open the glove compartment where I was sitting down, brought out an ID card that says Usher, hanged it on his neck, and went into the church.
So my guy in the Usher.
So I stood up, got to the entrance of the hall into the church, but I couldn't enter to the church because I had this belief that if I stay away from church, God wouldn't judge me. Because, you know, I told you I had a background.
Of course.
Christian background. So my mother kept telling us sin and judgment and stuff like that. So if once I'm not
bring iniquity into the church.
Once I'm not in church, God won't judge me. So I stood at the entrance of the church for close to 5 minutes. People that were entering and the ushers that were walking saw me as a very strange person. Now, I was doing some certain things very funny. It was so funny that I felt that God was going to judge me with thunder.
Once you stepped into the hole. So
the first thing I said, okay, if God was to strike me with thunder, what will I gladly lose in my body to test it? So I said, my leg. I said, okay, if thunder strikes my leg, it can heal. So I leaned on the door, stretched one leg into the church. Very funny. I'm telling you my story. I stretched one leg, thunder didn't strike.
Talking of testing the water with one leg.
Thunder didn't. I said, okay, maybe it's not the leg, maybe his hand. No wonder we see people who are handicapped. I said, okay, right, no, I need my right hand. So I leaned again, putting my left hand into the church. Thunder didn't strike. Just as I brought out the hand, I was thinking, I saw somebody at that time I didn't know was a deacon, carrying an offering basket, walking. And that deacon, I saw that deacon in club on Friday, dancing with girls. So I said to myself, if God didn't
strike this one,
he won't strike me. So I entered the church. That was my journey back to God. That singular encounter that my friend took me and I got to church. As I entered the church, I saw something different from the Catholic where I was coming from. I saw praise. They were jumping, they were dancing, they were singing. The pastor that was preaching, I knew I was oozing alcohol and cigarettes. The pastor that was preaching said, turn to your neighbor and say to your neighbor, God will bless you. I turned to my neighbor and said,
you got to be a nuisance, you got to say anything.
But I was enjoying the atmosphere. And because of that, I kept coming for 1 month without stop, just because of the atmosphere. I didn't know what was drawing me back, but I kept coming. In the course of coming, I heard they were announcing Shiloh in December. That they were going for Shiloh. Bus will leave 6 a.m. December 5th. Everybody that wants to go should register. So I asked how much. I think it was 5,000 naira at that time. So I hustled and I got 5,000 naira and I paid. I was going to go. The morning of the Shiloh, we were to leave. I woke up, we have to be in church early, so I woke up 4:30 to be in church by 5. On my way to church, there was no shop open, so there was nowhere to get cigarettes. I was looking for where to buy cigarettes. I was still going to church, but I was still smoking and drinking.
Of course.
Still humanizing. So I looked for, and that day, unlike me, there was no cigarette in my house. I said, okay, let me get to church. When I get to church, get my seat, drop my bag, I'll go and look for where to buy. As I got to church, they say, you are waiting for, let's go. So I was practically the last person to enter. The boss moved. I said, okay, when we get to Ore.
You sneak out and go and
I
help
will
yourself.
sneak out. I got to Ore, I got the shock of my life. Bosses from Port Harcourt, Enugu, Onitsha, Abraka, everybody met at...
All the church brothers.
So you were hearing, God bless you, God bless you, God bless you.
Hallelujah.
So I say, I can't smoke here.
You can't smoke. I said, God
I
bless you.
can't be the devil. I say, okay.
God bless you.
I say, when I get to Canaan land, I will fire down. I've never been to Canaan land before.
Wait. Didn't you consider thunder striking you smoking inside Canaan land?
So we entered the bus and we went. The minute we crossed the gate of Canaan land, my salvation started.
Whoa.
That was the day I stopped smoking till date. There was no prayer. There was no special prayer. As we crossed the gate, I felt a cool sensation. Goosebumps came up from my hand. I began to look at the whole atmosphere. I was marveled at the ground. We got into the place, got where we would sleep, arranged our things, went into the hall. Service started. And Bishop Oyedepo came and preached. After preaching, made an altar call. I came out for the altar call.
Whoa.
I saw me moving. I didn't know what I was moving. I made an altar call. After the altar call, service closed. We were to go and sleep and come back to church by 6 a.m. And service closed to 11. Now, do you know that I couldn't get back to my sleeping arena? I got to the field on my way to where I will sleep. I stopped there. I prayed till they were coming back 6 a.m.
Whoa.
I kept praying. I've never prayed that kind of prayer in my life before. I just kept praying. I kept praying. The more I would look as if I want to stop, I would continue. It was when people were coming back for morning session that my friend saw me say, you still there here? Will they go for morning session? I now stopped the prayer, followed them. I didn't bath again. Went for the morning. It was after the morning and I went back to bed. That was where my Christian journey began. And it has been an awesome journey with God. I'm telling you, it's a supernatural one. Validating what my dad said to me. That Jesus has planned my life even before my arrival.
If God really steps into your space, he defiles every method, every system, every stereotype. God has a million ways of dealing with different people. I don't know what your story is, but I'm sure God is on your tail. It might not be salvation or moral change, but I'm very sure God has your life all scripted out. And you might derail and lose touch and go far. But if God is on your tail, he always comes for you. I'm certain. He always comes for you. That young man moved from being a chain smoker to being a man of God. But you'll hear the rest of the story after the short break. Once again, don't go anywhere. Thank you for staying tuned. You're still on to Dexter's Bridge Show. We're speaking with Pastor Tony Kennedy, and before the break, we heard about this wonderful salvation experience. Nothing short from supernatural. And I always say this, if you think that strong people are the problems of the world, wait till you see how much havoc weakness can wreak. There's nothing good about being weak. If you had to choose between being strong and being weak, choose being strong. Yes, because weak people wreak the highest havoc. Strong people are the ones that change things. And what we've seen about him is beyond his walk with God, like we are going to learn, he has always been a strong man, always been resolute in anything he wanted to do. And that is definitely a story to take away. House of Royalty, how did you start the ministry?
Well, I think House of Royalty started, the vision was given in 2014. 2014 exactly, August 5th,
Okay.
2014. Before then, I was ordained a pastor in Winners Chapel in 2009 by Bishop Wedikpo. We got into ministry as part-time pastors. I began to serve, posted to churches, planted churches. But in 2013, something happened. There were pastors who didn't like my growth. I was a part-time pastor, and full-time pastors were being humiliated because of my results. And so all kinds of scheme came up, and they said they should remove me from my station. I was in a fasting in Canaan land when I got a call. I was in a place of fasting. I heard the Holy Spirit say, put on your phone. Normally my phone is never on. I left on Sunday after service to fast till Wednesday morning and fly back for the evening service. On Tuesday, I just heard the Holy Spirit say to me, say, put on your phone. Why would I put on my phone? I put on, the minute my phone finished booting, it was a call from the headquarters in the city where I was pastoring, and said that we want to appreciate God for all you have done. We want to thank you for your input, and God will reward you, but prepare to hand over tomorrow. It has never been done like that. You don't give that kind of information. Well, I said, okay, is that why the Holy Spirit said to put on my phone? So I got back, I did the handover normally. They said, come back to headquarters. It was by the time I got back to headquarters, I began to hear all kinds of rumors that the car I was driving was given to church, because no pastor at that time had been given a brand new car. How would they give this small boy a brand new car? At that time, I was a civil servant working in Delta State Judiciary. I practically left my job to serve God. I was working like a full-time pastor without a salary. I wasn't being paid. But I was putting in because I discovered it was God I was working for, not for man. So after they did that in 2013, I became depressed. And that was just shortly after I sold the car. I dropped the car. So the rumor now tallied well. Okay, you see, he knew they was going to, so he dropped the car before they would investigate him. But it was a sacrifice, my personal sacrifice. So that rumor now made me depressed. I became offended. I was angry at what believers will cook up against another believer. Because my Christianity wasn't that kind of Christian. I didn't believe that Christians would want to wish another Christian evil. So I became depressed. They removed me from the church in September 2013. September to December, I didn't hear God once. And that was very unusual in my life. I wake up every day with the voice of God. I didn't hear God from September to December. I went to Shiloh, came back, gave Shiloh sacrifice. I still didn't hear God. It was in January after the 21 days fast. I now heard God for the very first time. Like somebody who said, let me show this boy mercy. He said, get down to Canaan land. I want to speak to you. So I took off to Canaan land January. Towards the end of January, we just finished 21 days fast. Took a room and stayed there. I dropped my bag, brought out the books I was going to read, my Bible, arranged them on the table, changed from the cloth I was wearing from traveling to shorts and then shirts to put myself in the proper mood for the fasting. The minute I finished, I began to cry for 3 days. I didn't stop crying. It's very funny. I shed tears for 3 days. And God still didn't speak in the 3 days. If you put buckets, the tears I cried would have filled 6 buckets. By the time I finished, I saw my foolishness. I saw the love of God. I saw the spirit of love enter the room and envelop me. People say my Christianity is unique, is different. That I love people to the extreme. I don't get angry, I don't get offended. It started that day. Because I was very angry and offended at people who I felt had betrayed me. But after that encounter, the third day, as I was still in my tears, I cried for 3 days. No food, no water, no bathing, no brushing, nothing. I didn't open one book, I didn't do one prayer. It was just crying.
You know, at this point, I have to interject. God cannot do anything with any man until he cures you of bitterness. See, it's my biggest revelation in God. God cannot do jack with you until he has, like they would say in judiciary, you are purged of contempt. Until he purges you of bitterness. God doesn't do anything with you. You understand? And you see, God will not excuse you for being bitter because men hated you.
No.
Neither will he excuse you from being proud because men praised you. He expects you to stay in the center of his will. And so, I don't care who has hurt you. See, the number one key to healing is letting those who hurt you go. Like I always say, once you hold those who hurt you down, there are two people on the ground. And you know who the second person is? You. You. So I'm sure the whole time of silence, because you shut your heavens with bitterness. And God doesn't walk, like I always preach, Isaac, Abraham, two men who God worked with, and they came to a point in their life where they had to strive. But they understood that the blessing does not strive. A blessed man would corrupt the blessing if he goes into strife. So Abraham told Lot, I don't want to strive with you. You are my younger, you're just a boy. Choose anywhere you want to go. Move, because the blessing of my life will be corrupted once I strive. Same with Isaac. When he was blessed, he got to they had to stop many wells, and he had to let things go. So it was God curing you of strife and bitterness. And when he had his way, he showed up.
He showed up.
Exactly.
The third day, he now said, get down to Warri. I want to speak to you. Warri where? So I came back to Asaba. I sat down. I was just having a nice time worshiping God. I was hearing him. I kept asking, Warri where? Until a young pastor entered my office. At that time, I was running a relationship program. I had an office in the NBC Road. The pastor entered my office. He said, have you heard of this pastor, Pastor Kennedy? He says, in Warri, you need to go and hear that man. The minute he mentioned Warri, I said, Warri?
It tallied.
I said, let's get there. So we made plans. We went there for one service. We got to the service. We heard them advertising their Bible school, Master's Academy. August special. I said we must be there. So I registered for the August special. It started on Monday. Tuesday, the 5th of August, God showed up and spoke about the Vision House of Royalty. And
this was in what year now?
That was 2014, August 5th. He now spoke about the vision and told me, I asked him where. He said the city of Asaba. So I came down to Asaba. Now, how do I start? Where do I go? What do I do? So I had some 4 or 5 friends around with me who joined me, went on the mountain. We began to pray. We prayed for the name, prayed for the date, prayed for everything. Now, how do I start? The beauty about it was the day God spoke about the vision, God said one thing I will never forget in my life. He said to me, follow Pastor Kennedy. As I make him, I will make you. So automatically I knew the person I was going to follow in the journey of this ministry. So, but how do I meet Pastor Kennedy was another big problem. And from nowhere, I returned back from the Bible school on a Saturday. On Monday, I got a call from him Monday morning.
Whoa.
How he got my number is a mystery. And said, where are you? I said, I'm in the city of Asaba. Can you get down to Warri? I said, yes, sir. So I took off. I got to Warri. I met him in his office. As I entered his office, before I could say, good morning, I celebrate you or anything, he began to bless me. He blessed and blessed and blessed and blessed and blessed. For 5 minutes, he was blessing me. After I finished, I was on my knees. I sat down. And I said, let me explain to him what God gave me. The minute I explained, I told him everything that I got here in the Master's Academy. He now told me to write down. I began to write down. He said, how to disengage from where you are and how to begin, how to start. Do you know when you started the House of Royalty, the way you start a business? He said, go back to the city where you are sent. Take a questionnaire. Find out why people don't go to church. What is their reason for not going to church? What is the thing that they have against the churches that are existing? So I brought out questionnaire, began to share questionnaires everywhere. It was from that questionnaire that was gathered that I now discovered how to start the Church House of Royalty. I had another challenge. I wasn't, as it were, what word will I use? In quote, I wasn't your normal pastor. I knew there were so many things that was different about
You
me.
couldn't be. I mean, given all where you've come from.
No. I couldn't. And so I had to ask God first. I said, are you sure you are calling me? Do you know who you are calling? Or do I have to change everything about me for this call?
To be pastorly.
And God said something to me I will never forget in my life. He said, I called Peter to reach out to the Jews. I called Paul to reach out to the Gentiles. I have a calling for you. I said, okay. do you know the funny thing? That day I was going through social media. After God said that thing to me, I now saw somewhere, I said, the writer of, I think it was a Christian inspirational quote. He said, you can't affect a generation you don't understand. So I knew there were people I understood that I could affect. That was why God was calling me. So I said, okay, since God is calling me, this is my kind of person. But I also knew that I was going to be judged by the religious Christians for the kind of person I was, or I am. So how do I go about it? Just as I was thinking how to go about it, I saw another quote. God was just using quote to speak to me. I saw another quote that says, it's better to be a lion for a day than a chicken all your life. So I knew I needed courage. So I had to work on my courage, worked on everything. Then the vision began on the 15th, on the, 15th of February. That was when we were originally supposed to start. But Pastor Korede Kumara said he couldn't make it. So he came on the 31st of January, 2015. That was a Saturday for the inauguration. The first service was held on the 1st of February, 2015. And that's how House of Royalty has been in existence. And it has been a journey, a beautiful journey working with God. I'm telling you. There's nothing I would have wished more for my life than what I'm doing today. I'm still being judged. I'm still being, the thing I've understood about human beings, what you don't understand is easy to criticize.
Of course. There's something that Pastor Bojo Imade said. He said that if you back down from what God has sent you to do because of what men would say or the fear of backlash from people, you would never amount to anything significant.
I'm telling you.
If for any reason you back down what God has sent you because you are afraid of backlash from men or what they will say, you will never amount to significance. Like you rightly said, in Joshua chapter 1, God had told Joshua, Moses, my son, is done, and all the stuff. But between verses 1 to 6 or so, God repeated strong and courageous over 6 times. At the point, it came 2 times the same verse. It says, only be strong and be courageous. And that says, have I not told you to be strong and be courageous? So it gives me an inkling that of all the things God will give you, courage is not among. You have to go and
build
get
it yourself.
Build it. Very interesting.
And I think the first point of courage is hearing God. When you are certain it's God you hear, you tend to build courage on that voice.
On the word itself.
Yes, on the word. I think that's what has kept me, because it has, I would say it's a rosy journey, but it has not been rosy. There's been backlash, attacks, all kinds of things. There was a day a pastor from the city where I pastor walked into the office on his knees begging me. And I said, why will you be begging me? You should stand up. You shouldn't do this. I'm not God. He said no, that he wants to apologize. That he has been preaching against me, talking all kinds of things. What kind of pastor is that? See the way he dressed. Does he dress like a pastor? Does he behave like a pastor? Until God had to deal with him personally. So he now came. And this is where my concern comes. I don't know him. I've never been bothered about him. There is nobody that I'm bothered about. If what you are doing, I don't understand it, or what you are doing is not right, my duty as a Christian for you is to pray for you.
Pray for you.
I won't condemn you. I won't judge you. Because if you read the Bible enough, you will discover that God is not stereotyped. He's not. Imagine if it were in our time that a man of God comes and tells you, God said to me to go to a brothel and marry somebody. Would you believe it?
It's a trend on Twitter.
I am telling you. So I don't stereotype people. I don't judge people. I don't condemn people. So I began to wonder, why would this man go all this length? Carry so much hatred about somebody who is doing God's work. And that's the shocking thing. Now, listen to me. I was on evangelism one day. That was early part of ministry. I used to wear rugged jeans because my generation, that was what they were wearing. So in order to relate with them, I wore rugged jeans. I was evangelizing a young man who was, if you see him, you could see how frustrated he was. You could see that this guy was contemplating suicide. I was buying fuel in the filling station when I saw him. So I left my car, walked to him. I was talking to him about Jesus, getting him to open up. Why he was looking like this. He was looking like somebody who wants to die today. A religious Christian passed and got to where I was. Stood and heard I was talking about Jesus. The next thing, she attacked me. He said, look at all of you destroying the name of Jesus. See how what you are addressing, you are preaching Jesus. She didn't even think about the soul I was talking about. The soul I was talking to, it didn't bother her. Our problem was the way I was looking.
Was a problem.
And I said to myself, I didn't say one word though. I just said, sorry man, don't worry man, I will go and change man. It's okay man, please sir, please man, forgive me. Do you know that prior before she came, that young man and myself have been standing there for 2 minutes, he didn't say one word to me. The way I replied that woman, the woman passed.
Preaching? Was the real preaching?
He now turned to me. He said, now I will listen to you.
Was the real preaching?
He said, you didn't answer her, you didn't insult her. I said, why? I said, she has talked based on what she knows. You know, the Bible says, do not talk arrogantly in your speech, for God is judged by your actions.
Exactly.
And your actions is a product of your knowledge. So I don't get offended at people the way they behave, because what they did is based on what they know.
Knowledge at the time, yeah.
So I didn't backlash back at her.
And you didn't put any effort. Your reaction came natural. It was you.
So the young man listened to me, gave his life to God, now told me the challenges he was going through. And I told him, I said, Jesus can solve everything. You have to put your trust in him.
You see, God brought that woman to simplify your work. Because the man had put up a lot of, so just let me just snap this guy out of this. He brought the shocker, you know.
So I think that's practically my experience in pastoring. But it has been a glorious journey. God has been faithful. Signs and wonders have been God's signature behind the ministry. There's been incredible miracles. And I've been able to connect with mentors, fathers, those above me. And one of the most incredible miracles in church I've never seen till date. A lady walked into church 2016. She walked into church with 1 foot 6 inches longer than the other. And in front of the entire church, the leg grew out and became normal. So it has been a glorious journey, sir. So, and the reason is because I'm focused and I don't judge people.
Of course. I'll ask you, what would you say, I know there have been many, but if you can place your fingers on it, what would you say is the biggest challenge you have suffered in ministry, and how did you get out of it?
Religious Christians. Religious Christians who condemn and make up stories, who don't understand that every man has his part, who keeps comparing you. Yet the scripture says, he that compares himself with another is not wise. That's King James. King James sometimes does not put the language very well, but another translation says, a man who goes out of his way to compare himself with another is a foolish person. So I don't compare. Whatever God is doing in your life, I celebrate it. I'm happy with you. We may not, as it were, be friends, but I will keep praying for your advancement. I don't know who is fake and who is real. I didn't call you. But I will keep praying. And do you know the funny thing? One thing people don't know. If a man is fake, do you know that even under a fake man, people are still being converted? Because Jesus will be Jesus. Paul was told that there is a man preaching with the name of Jesus. He's doing heresy. We know he's not called. Paul said to him, he said, as long as the name of Jesus is being preached, the kingdom is advancing, let him be. So the thing is, sometimes... Even Jesus said the same thing.
Yes. For say those who are with us are not against us.
So sometimes, let God do his work. Don't do it. And that's the reason why most Christians are grounded and handicapped. I'm living the best life I can ever live. I'm telling you the truth. Where I am now, I don't have a mate in my class. And the reason is simply because I understand a certain level of God. I walk with him. I am not encompassed with other people's problems. I am not focused on other people while they are doing their things. I'm focused on how he says I should do my own. And I'm doing my own and I'm walking my path. People call me arrogant. People call me proud. It doesn't matter. If you come to me and there's anything you want to find out from me, I'm ready to share. My sharing with you does not mean we'll be friends. I choose my friends. Sir. Your friends determines, listen to me, association determines destination. So I choose my friends wisely. If you are not going in my direction, even though I can lend help to you, we can't, we can't still be friends. Yeah. And so that's the thing that my greatest problem has been religious Christians. It's not even unbelievers. It's not even, there's a place I go to work out, a gym. I've been working out in the gym for 6 months. Nobody in the gym knew I was a pastor. I didn't come there and say, praise the Lord. Before we gym, are you saved? Are you saved? No. We just come, we work out. They see the way I comport myself. I do my own, I go. I'm always focused. One day, a young man walked up to me and said, are you a pastor? I said, why do you ask? He said, I saw a billboard that looks like you. I said, yes, that's me. He said, wow, you don't act like a pastor. So I like to come to your church. That guy single-handedly brought 6 persons in church. Some of my strongest members are people who came from that place. I allowed my life
to do the preaching.
To the preaching.
Yeah.
I didn't come to interject in their work, to stop what they were doing, to listen to Jesus Christ. Religion is our greatest problem in the body of Christ.
Okay, I have a quarrel with the word religion. My personal quarrel. So I'd rather say legalists, because I get the point about people who are legalistic Christians. You know, Paul and Peter had the same challenge at some point, given Paul's antecedents. When Paul came over, Peter withdrew from eating with the uncircumcised, and he just got on that legalistic path, trying to measure people's lives based on your own standard, your own thinking, and not allowing God and His Word to be the one to line them out. But anything we do, be sure that, like you've said, your actions are governed by love and the intention to do the other person the utmost good.
Yes.
Don't kill those that Christ came to save with your legalistic outputs. Don't do that. Yes, don't do that. Your righteousness, like Christ said, has to be more than that of the Pharisees. It has to go beyond castigating and pulling people down and killing people. Well, you agree with me, it's been an amazing time with Pastor Tony Kennedy of the House of Royalty here in Asaba, and his story has been nothing short of amazing, and you can see God's hand has been on him. Thank you very much, sir, for making our time to be on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you. I'm very sure many people whose life will be changed by your story, and we pray that you keep doing what God has called you to do, and more doors open up to you, and we keep populating heaven and depopulating the kingdom of the devil. Pastor Tony, before we go, what would be your last word for our audience?
Well, my last word would be, sometimes your difference is not a vice, it's a virtue. What makes you different is your niche. Your niche is what makes you marketable in life. Embrace your niche. Adhere to God's instruction and walk according to purpose. Being like every other person does not make you stand out. We're all created to stand out. So it is okay to be different as long as you are not negatively different. Be positive about life, impact people's life, learn to share love no matter where you are.
Sometimes the problem is not about being good or bad, it's just about being different. So you have to be discerning. Somebody can be different from you and not necessarily be bad. So difference is actually an advantage, not a disadvantage. Once again, thank you for having stayed till this part of the show, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Don't forget to like, to subscribe, and follow us on all social media platforms, and keep pushing this word of hope to those who need to hear it. See you on the next episode, and God bless you.